Awesome. It is another full disclosure Thursday, and we've got Hayley and we got Sean. We're
Hello.
all here. Hey, hey.
Hello,
So,
hello.
hey, kind of just this week jumping into everything, we have a case study that I wanted to talk through. And I think this is a pretty interesting case study for people in general because we have clients, mutual clients, Sean. You've did their purchase, and I think you've helped them through a couple of refis. And
That's right.
they're a couple who have the world of COVID has kind of changed everything. You know, they bought a place that they were probably going to be in for a good 5 to 7 years, or maybe longer, and they're there probably what maybe Haley. When did they buy that place? 2 years ago.
I can tell you in 2 seconds. Here, I
She's
have it.
saying so a year and a half ago or something like that, and they want to move to Southern California. So now we want to figure out how can we do that, right? We own a
Hmm.
property up here. We want to buy a property in another location in another part of the state. Um, from a lending standpoint, kind of what are the different ways, Sean, that we can approach this?
Yeah, so it's not too difficult. It basically what a big part of it comes down to is employment, right? So the big concern with moving even pre-COVID shelter in place world was what are you going to do for a job? How are you going to pay your mortgage? Now what's happening now with so much remote work is we just have to verify that your company will allow you to work remote. So I have a client closing tomorrow that is exactly that same case. Works in San Francisco, just bought a house in Hermosa Beach. And as of this morning, underwriting said, we need verification you can work remote. And that was it. So it's not that difficult. I think it really the bigger consideration is what do want to do with your property that you have here? Do you want to rent it? Do you want to sell it? Those are kind of the bigger considerations, I think.
And in this case study, initial look at the numbers, we could sell that property and get them out paying for the expenses of selling it, you know, the taxes and the commissions and the different things, and some money on top. So we can it's early in the process, so we can get them out because we got them in kind of right, so we can
Mm-hmm.
get them out at this point. But a lot of their original down payment and all of that kind of stuff is tied up in this house. So how do we deal with that?
So that's where you get into the normal way is the bridge loan. So this is actually where it gets a little bit more tricky. So a bridge loan is basically a private money loan that enables you to access your equity in your current property. But but they won't do, you can't say, let's just say we have a house for $1 million that's worth $1 million and I've leveraged 800,000 in mortgage. I can't just grab 200,000. They're not going to do 100% financing. Bridge loan lenders typically like to see at least 20 to 30%, depending on which company it is, 20 to 30% equity after the bridge loan, because they just don't want to take any risk. So that's where it gets a little bit trickier if you don't have substantial equity. Another option is basically buying a house with low money down. So you have to use some of your available funds, assuming there are some. You put less money down. Then when you sell your home, you pay that off. You do a recast, which is where you pay down the principal from the proceeds from your sale, and they adjust your mortgage to be based on your new balance. There's a few different ways that works. The other, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so that was kind of one of the ideas that, and can you explain how this would work if it was being used as a strategy? Doing
Yeah.
a 90-10-10 or a 90-15? right?
Ye-
Or sorry, an
Yep.
80-10-10, or an 80-10-10, or an 80-15, where let's say you're on an 80-15, you're purchasing a property somewhere else, you're putting 5% down, you're getting two loans, you're getting a main loan that's 30-year fixed on your 80%, and then you're getting that second loan of 15% of the price on that kind of equity line. And that when you sell the property you currently live in, you would then turn around and pay off that equity line. Is that the best way to approach it? And can you carry those two loans?
Yeah. So that's one way. So with the 10% down, you can do the quote unquote 80-10-10, which is first mortgage for 80% of the value, and then a second mortgage for 10% of the value. With 5% down, that doesn't work. The equity line lenders won't take on the extra risk. They want you to have more than 5% equity. So what we do in that case is you're stuck at the conventional loan limit, which should be increasing a little bit next year. I think it'll probably go up another 20,000 next year. But as of now, you have a loan amount of 765,600 in LA County, or Orange County, San Diego County. And then, so that puts you at a max purchase price of about 805. But to your point, we do have to qualify with both mortgages. And there's different routes of doing that. So now that we've realized, wait, I can actually buy a house without accessing my equity. Maybe I don't want to sell it anymore. Maybe I want to retain it as an investment property. We can use the rental income, the projected rental income on their current home to offset the mortgage. So you can use income that isn't there yet as an offset if you're going to retain the property. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and it just comes down to finding the right solution for the client.
So that's interesting. So you don't actually have to have the lease in place to be able to say, because you could turn around and say, okay, maybe we're gonna rent it. Here's what we can get in rent. So that is, the lender looks at that and offsets that loan. But as soon as you purchase the other property, you can turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to sell that house.
Yeah, so you do have to get a lease. So they caught on to that idea of, oh, I'll just tell a little white lie. So they do what it used to be. So so the reason these guidelines are in place is in 2008. In 2008, it got to a point where people were saying, hey, I'm going to buy this new house as my primary residence. I'll rent out the old one. And then they bought the new place and they just foreclosed on the property they were completely upside down on. So they got wise to that game. And then what they did after that was said, you have to have 30% equity and the lease agreement and the deposit receipt for the security deposit cleared. And then you can use rental income to qualify. So it swung in the entire other direction. You had to have 30% equity to be able to use any rental income.
Okay.
And then they updated to where now you have to have a lease. So you would execute a lease because they don't want you telling a little white lie. But if you had a lease and for some reason the lease fell out after closing, you can do whatever you want to do. So we just have to do checks and balances going into it, and then it changes after that.
Okay.
So what would you say of the transactions that you've done recently? What is the most common way? Because with most people who are fairly new in their purchase, the equity hasn't had much chance to build, right? There's for these guys, there's probably anywhere from 6 to 10% of equity in the property since they purchased it, plus whatever they've paid off on the loan and stuff. So and then their down payment to 20%. So they probably have like 30% equity tied up in the property. So what are people choosing as the most kind of common? Like, is the sell it and get a rent back from your buyer, where you get to stay in the property for an additional 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that in an additional month, where when it closes, then you go shopping for the next property. That's a way we've done it a number of times. So that's one way. Then on the lending end, it sounds like you'd kind of have to do an 80-10-10 to do it that way, and maybe get your lease in place. And then if you decide after the fact, if the tenant pans out, that's great. And if the tenant doesn't pan out, maybe you could sell then at that point.
Yeah, so the most common two ways that I end up doing these, because I'll be referred somebody for a bridge loan, and that's my least favorite option because it's the most expensive option. So I try to use that as my absolute last resort. But then I show them the other two options, which the most common two is going to be doing 5 or 10% down, buying now, and then paying down my mortgage after I sell, taking proceeds basically and transferring from one place to another. And then outside of that option, it is the rent back option. So you can do, you get into contract, say on a 30-day contract, and then you do a 60-day rent back, meaning you retain the property. You're now renting from the new owner. That gives you 90 days, 30-day close plus 60-day rent back. That gives you 90 days to find a new home. That is, a clean way to do it. The fear with that is, well, what if I don't find a place in 90 days? Just knowing how competitive the market is. So I'd say the large majority of the people I help do this, assuming they qualify, are going to be the low money down on this one, and then I'll just pay down the loan after I sell my current place. That's the most common.
That's the most common. Yeah. So perfect. And then what about any other? It tends to be a little easier for people who have been in a property for a very long, not even a long period of time, but if you have somebody who's 6-7 years to 10 years in a property, they usually have enough equity for us to do a line of credit, right? And you just pull or do you prefer to do a cash out refi, or what way do you suggest for people who aren't as early in the process of a new home, who are looking to make a shift, who've had a place for a long period of time, and now they're looking to either get a bigger place or they're looking to move into one of these other locations? What way do we, because it's a little bit of a different approach for that kind of a buyer.
Yeah, so for that, it's more of future planning. So if you're setting up a home equity line of credit on your current home, it's most likely going to be, I just want to have access to these funds if I need them in the future. The problem with going that direction, that's a harder direction to go, but people do it all the time. They'll just tell a little white lie. So here's the problem with that is, I go to a credit union and I say, I'd like to set up an equity line of credit on my current home. They say, okay, that's great. What's the money? What are you using the money for? Oh, well, I'm going to buy a new house. Oh, is that going to be your new primary residence? Yes, I'm going to move to Southern California. I'm sorry, then your current home is either going to sell quickly and we don't want to lend on it because it's too short, or it's now going to be an investment property and we don't want to lend on it.
We don't do lines of credit on investment properties.
Exactly. So I have somebody actually right now that they reached out to me yesterday. They set up an equity line on their current home for $200,000. It closes Monday, and they're buying a new property. They made an offer today using that equity line of credit. They didn't. I haven't asked because it's kind of, I don't. But I'm positive they didn't say we want this money to go buy another place. Yeah. It all comes down to intention. So on the loan application, it says, in the declarations, it says, do you intend to occupy this property as your primary residence? Well, if I'm applying for a home equity line of credit and I want the equity line of credit to buy a new primary residence, then I do not intend to occupy this one. And that means it becomes, quote unquote, a non-owner occupied property, which is the same as an investment property. It means I'm not living there. And that's where it gets tricky. But if you were taking out an equity line, let's just say it was in February, I'm going to take out $200,000 because I'm going to do a remodel. So I set up the equity line with the intention of a remodel, and then COVID hits, And now I have this equity line that I haven't utilized the funds for, but I've decided that I'm going to move because of everything that's happened. You can use those funds to move at that time because it was that the funds are always available. Once the equity line is set up, the funds are available to you.
Yeah, I'd say it kind of works very much like how, say, a 1031 exchange works, where your intent on something is, the initial intent going in, but then suddenly you discover that you financially can't do it that way, then that changes your intent. So,
Exactly.
Okay. So that's kind of, and then for people who are quite organized and much more into kind of planning, they can do the cash out refi, right?
Correct. Or and then it really depends. So using the same scenario, I've had it where people will refinance as an investment property, taking cash out, if they haven't already refinanced, because rates have moved down so low that in a lot of cases, I've gotten them lower interest rates than what they currently had as a primary residence, even though we're refinancing as an investment property. So we just have to look at it from all angles. And that's what's so difficult about this is we always want just the simple answer. And when we're looking at this, it truly is like when people refer me for a bridge loan, because that's the quick, easy answer, right? Oh, you just do a bridge loan, you take some money from here, you put it over there, and you're done. It's easy to understand, but there's so many other ways to approach it, and we just have to be really strategic about finding the best path.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that says it in a nutshell, I think. So ultimately, it's for those early in the process where you're looking to get, your down payment and what you've paid off in the loan and the bit of equity that you've gained out. It's kind of do a low down payment loan to make your purchase on the other end. And then when you sell the other property, you pay off that second chunk of debt and or something along those lines. There's hybrid versions of that, but that's the general process. Or there's the sell and get the rent back, and with the rent back, use that time to go and do your shopping.
Right. So again, the 60-day rent back, that is oftentimes I either don't have the equity, I don't have the funds available for the 5 or 10% down, or I can't qualify for both payments. So we kind of go process of elimination. There's a bunch of different ways to approach it. By process of elimination, which one makes the most sense for you?
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. Hey, Sean, this is tremendous, and we're only seeing your name today. If we go looking for you, where do we find you?
That's right. You can Google Sean Herrero at Adventure Lender on Instagram. Those are the best places to find me.
And where are we, Hayley, when we go looking for ourselves?
We're everywhere. We're at elevationrealestate.com or on Facebook, Elevation Real Estate, or Elevation SF on Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, we won't be around unless you want to interrupt your Thanksgiving dinner for a full disclosure Thursday next week. I think we'll give it a skip for next week and return.
Whatever will we do? The audience is going to be in up in arms.
Yeah, they're going to be so lost without it. Awesome. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and thank you all. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Cheers.
Sean. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.